You have asked me why people turn against you the closer you approach success. And to answer you, I must not simply give you a list of reasons, but must take you deep into the inner fabric of the psyche, into the archetypal drama that is played out whenever a soul begins to rise beyond the boundaries set by the collective. Success is not merely an outer achievement, it is an inner initiation, a movement of the individual toward individuation, toward becoming whole. And it is precisely this movement that awakens forces both within and without that resist transformation. The world does not merely cheer the one who ascends, it also reacts with fear, envy, and hostility, because the ascent of one exposes the shadow of many. When you draw nearer to the summit of your destiny, the light you carry grows brighter, and light does not simply illuminate, it casts sharper shadows. I have seen in dreams, in the unconscious material of patience, and in the stories of myth, that success is never an isolated event. It is always symbolized as a crossing. The crossing of a river, the ascent of a mountain, the arrival at a promised land, and with every crossing there stands a guardian, a dragon, or a hostile crowd who resists the traveler. Why? Because the collective psyche resents that one among them dares to leave the familiar valley. The crowd feels abandoned, and more deeply, it feels exposed, for the one who rises demonstrates that there was always a higher possibility, and this awakens guilt and rage in those who remain below. You must understand that in each human being there dwells both the archetype of the hero and the archetype of the betrayer. They are two sides of the same psychic coin. The hero ascends, the betrayer follows, not to support, but to wound. We see this in the story of Christ with Judas, in Caesar with Brutus, in the myths of kings slain by their closest companions. The nearer you approach your crown, the nearer also does betrayal draw itself to you. For betrayal is the shadow twin of coronation. And so when you feel the people around you begin to shift, when their admiration cools into resentment, when their smiles hide daggers, you are witnessing not merely personal weakness, but a deep archetypal pattern at work. They are enacting what the unconscious compels them to do, to resist the individuation of another, because it mirrors back their own refusal to grow. In analysis, I have often observed that when a patient begins to move toward their own authenticity, those around them instinctively seek to pull them back. They call it arrogance, selfishness, or dangerous change. But underneath it is a primitive fear of being left behind. Think of the crab in the bucket that claws down the one attempting to climb out. The others cannot tolerate the sight of freedom. It is not your success itself that enrages them, it is what your success says about their own stagnation. Your light irritates their darkness, and rather than confronting their shadow, they prefer to dim your flame. But let us not merely condemn them, for within each of us is the same reflex. Have you never felt uneasy when another surpassed you? When someone near accomplished what you secretly wished but dared not attempt? That sting, that bitterness, that envy, it is the shadow speaking. The part of the psyche that resents the growth of others, because it reflects our own unlived life. If you understand this within yourself, you will see it clearly in others. Envy is not an aberration. It is a universal companion of human striving. And when you climb higher, you amplify envy's voice in the collective psyche, and people turn against you because they cannot yet bear the sight of their own unfulfilled potential. In dreams, envy often appears as a mob, or as a crowd hurling stones, or as whispers in the night. The dreamer who finds himself climbing a tower is often pursued by faceless figures. These figures are not merely enemies, but aspects of his own psyche, those parts that resist ascent. Thus, when you face outer hostility on the path to success, recognize that you are also confronting the same inner resistance. The enemy outside mirrors the enemy within. The question is not only why they turn against you, but why you fear their turning. The answer lies in the shadow, in that part of you which doubts your own right to rise. We must go deeper still. Success is not only light and achievement, it awakens archetypal guilt. To rise above others is to break a primordial law of the tribe, the law that says we must remain equal, safe in sameness. The successful individual violates this law. He dares to stand apart. And this is why in myths the hero is often sacrificed. The tribe unconsciously believes that the rising one endangers them all. For if one leaves, the fragile cohesion of the group is threatened. Thus, the community often feels compelled to destroy or exile the successful one, not because he has done wrong, but because he has done too much right. This is the scapegoat mechanism. The tribe projects its fear and guilt upon the one who rises, and in so doing it preserves its fragile sense of balance. The crucifixion of the Christ is not an exception. It is the very pattern by which the collective deals with the individual who carries too much light. Now imagine yourself in such a position. You strive, you ascend, you overcome the inner resistance of laziness, fear, and doubt, and as you shine brighter, those around you begin to whisper. They may say you have changed, as if change were a crime. They may say you think yourself better than them, as if your growth were an insult to their stillness. They may smile, but secretly wish for your fall. Do not be naive. This is not about you personally. It is about the archetype you now embody. You have become the hero in their unconscious drama, and every hero must be opposed. Their hostility is a ritual reaction. It belongs to the ancient dance of shadow and light. I tell you this not so that you grow bitter, but so that you understand. If you expect universal support as you approach success, you misunderstand the human psyche. Expect resistance, and you will not be shocked when it comes. Expect betrayal, and you will not be broken by it. Know that it is a way of the unconscious to resist transformation, and that includes the unconscious of those around you. The more your success reveals their unfulfilled selves, the more they will turn against you, unless they too are willing to enter the fire of change. But let us not forget that this hostility to serve the purpose. If no one opposed you, if everyone applauded, you would never be tested, and without testing, you would never become strong. The opposition of others is the crucible in which your inner gold is formed. Just as alchemists knew that the base matter must be placed in the fire to transmute, so must the striving soul face the fire of envy, suspicion, and hostility to become whole. Your success is not yet authentic until it has passed through the trial of resistance. The shadow of others forces you to confront your own shadow. The betrayal of friends teaches you to stand upon your own ground. The envy of the crowd compels you to ask whether your ascent is genuine or merely inflated. Thus, even in their turning against you, they serve you. And perhaps this is the most mysterious truth, that those who oppose you are not merely enemies, but unconscious collaborators in your individuation. They play the dark role so that you may confront light and darkness within yourself. The archetype arranges it so you cannot reach the summit without facing betrayal, for without betrayal there is no crucifixion, and without crucifixion there is no resurrection. The psyche knows this, and so it weaves the drama around you. To complain is to miss the deeper pattern. To accept and to understand is to transcend it. So, when you feel them turn against you, do not ask, why do they hate me? Instead, ask, what part of me is being mirrored back? What trial is being offered to me now? For the hostility of others is like the dream figure who pursues you, frightening, yes, but also meaningful. If you confront it consciously, you grow. If you deny it, you fall into bitterness and despair. The choice is yours. Will you allow their turning to break you, or will you allow it to initiate you into deeper strength? I tell you these things in a manner that may seem solemn, for they are solemn truths. But let us also remember that behind the drama lies something greater, the self, the totality of the psyche, which seeks wholeness. Every betrayal, every hostility, every envy that rises against you is secretly the self, urging you onward, stripping you of illusions, forcing you into solitude, where you may finally hear the voice of your own soul. Success is not the applause of the crowd, it is the union with the self, and paradoxically, the crowd that turns against you helps to drive you there. By depriving you of false comforts, by forcing you into the desert where the encounter with God takes place. And so I say, do not curse them. See through them, recognize that in their turning, they are giving you the very gift you most need, the gift of confrontation with shadow, both theirs and yours. And only through such confrontation can you become whole. You may believe that success is an outer accomplishment measured by titles, possessions, or recognition, but in the depths of the psyche, success is always symbolic of transformation. Each outer achievement corresponds to an inner movement, and that is why those around you feel disturbed. When you rise, they sense, often unconsciously, that something within you has changed. And change in one member of the group always destabilizes the group as a whole. In the tribal unconscious, stability is maintained by sameness. The one who dares to differentiate threatens that fragile equilibrium, and so the instinctive response is resistance. This resistance is rarely conscious. Your friends may not even know why they feel uneasy, why they suddenly criticize or distance themselves, but the unconscious knows it is the ancient fear of disruption, of exile, of losing the cohesion of the circle. Thus, your ascent awakens the primal anxiety of the collective. If we look at myths across cultures, we see this pattern repeated again and again. Prometheus ascends to steal fire from the gods and is punished, not because fire itself is evil, but because he dared to transgress the boundaries set by Olympus. The tribe always sets boundaries, When one crosses them, he becomes both benefactor and threat. The same fire that enlightens also burns. The collective senses this ambivalence and reacts with hostility. This is why people turn against you the closer you get to success. They feel you have trespassed into a realm that exposes their own unwillingness to dare. You embody the Promethean act, and thus they unconsciously chain you to the rock of their resentment. But let us also turn inward. Within you, too, there is a collective, a society of psychic figures, and not all of them support your ascent. The persona, the shadow, the anima or animus, the child, the wise old man, all these archetypal figures live within. Some rejoice when you rise, others feel threatened. The shadow in particular resists success, for success means growth, and growth means exposure. The shadow thrives in concealment, and when you shine more brightly, you threaten to expose its contents. Thus, as you grow outwardly successful, your own shadow will conspire against you through self-sabotage, doubt, or even attracting hostility from outside. The outer betrayal is never fully separable from the inner. What you fear within is often mirrored back through the actions of others. The closer you move towards success, the louder the chorus of doubt within, and this chorus attracts external voices to join it, as if the world itself has conspired to test you. Consider the dreams of the one who is approaching success. Frequently, there are images of ascent, climbing stairs, mountains, ladders, and alongside these there appear pursuers, critics, or even demons. The dreamer climbs, but always with threat behind or below. This is no accident. The psyche reveals the truth, that ascent is never solitary triumph, but a drama that always invokes opposition. If you imagine you will simply rise without challenge, you misunderstand the archetypal pattern. Every success evokes its own resistance. It is the law of psychic balance. Just as every increase of light sharpens the shadow it casts, the higher the mountain, the more treacherous the winds, the brighter the flame, the more ravenous the moths. And so hostility is not a deviation, it is an inevitability. You may ask, why then do we pursue success if it brings such conflict? The answer lies in the nature of the self. The archetype of wholeness, the self calls each of us to individuation, to become who we are meant to be, regardless of the cost. Success, in its truest sense, is not about worldly applause, but about answering this inner call. The hostility of others is the toll you pay for obedience to the self. You cannot avoid it without betraying yourself. If you shrink back to please them, you betray your own soul, and that betrayal is worse than all outer rejection. To live in the approval of others but in disobedience to your own destiny is a form of psychic death. Better to endure the arrows of envy than to smother the voice of your own self. Yet I do not romanticize the pain of betrayal. It cuts deeply, precisely because it so often comes from those closest to you. Why is this so? Because those who stand nearest to your inner life are also the carriers of projections. They hold pieces of your shadow, your anima, your child. When they turn against you, it feels like the very world has turned, for it is not merely their hostility, but also the betrayal of your own unconscious projections that wounds you. In truth, no one can betray you except the one in whom you have placed part of your own soul. Thus, when they turn, you feel as though a piece of you has been ripped away. And indeed, it has, for betrayal forces you to withdraw your projections, to reclaim those lost fragments of yourself. Painful though it is, this is the very process of individuation. Through betrayal, you are forced to gather back your soul, piece by piece, and stand alone. Only then can you know who you truly are. Apart from their reflection, do not therefore despise the betrayal. Mourn it, yes, but also understand its meaning. It is the archetype at work, compelling you to wholeness. Recall that Christ, too, was betrayed not by strangers, but by his closest companion. Recall that in myths, the hero is often abandoned by his family, mocked by his friends, misunderstood by his peers. This is the price of carrying the fire. If you bear light, you must also bear solitude. Solitude is not loneliness. It is initiation. It strips you of false supports, so that you may stand in union with the self. The hostility of others is thus a strange gift. Though it arrives wrapped in pain, you may also notice that as you ascend, people do not merely turn against you with open hostility, but often with subtle undermining. They may cloak their envy in advice, their resentment in concern. They may warn you not to aim so high, not to risk too much, not to think too differently. They disguise their fear as wisdom, but listen closely. Beneath their words lies the ancient refrain: do not leave the tribe, do not differentiate, remain as we are. They do not consciously know this, but their unconscious speaks through them. When you hear such voices, you must discern. Is this genuine guidance, or is this the collective fear speaking? Discernment is part of the hero's task. Without it, you will be pulled down into mediocrity, mistaking the voices of fear for the voice of truth. Now let us turn to a deeper mystery. Why does success itself feel like danger? Why, when you approach the summit, do you feel more alone, more exposed, more vulnerable? Because success awakens the archetype of death. In the psyche, ascent and death are always intertwined. To rise to a new level is to let the old die. Each success is therefore a small death, and those around you, sensing this death unconsciously, resist it. They do not wish for the old order to pass away. They cling to the familiar, even if the familiar is stagnation. You, by moving forward, symbolize their mortality, their inevitable transformation. They turn against you because you remind them of death, and the unconscious resists death at all costs. But if you embrace this truth, success becomes something greater than achievement. It becomes initiation into the mystery of death and rebirth. To rise is to die to the old self and be reborn as the new. To endure hostility without collapsing is to pass through crucifixion into resurrection. And this is the true meaning of individuation, not the applause of the crowd, but the union of life and death within, the capacity to endure transformation without disintegration. The one who can do this becomes whole, and wholeness is a rarer treasure than worldly success. Therefore, when others turn against you, do not see it merely as injustice. See it as participation in an archetypal drama, recognize that they are acting out roles assigned by the unconscious. You are the hero, and they are the guardians of the threshold. Without them, there would be no threshold to cross. They resist, not because they are evil, but because resistance is necessary for transformation. The psyche demands opposition, so that strength may be forged. Without Judas, Christ would not have reached the cross. Without the dragon, there would be no treasure. Without betrayal, there would be no wholeness. Thus, the hostility of others is woven into the pattern of your success. It is not accidental. It is necessary, and so I tell you again, expect it. Do not be surprised when they turn. It is written in the psyche, their envy, their fear, their betrayal are not the end of your path, but the very signs that you are on the path. If no one resists you, perhaps you have not yet truly begun to rise. If no one envies you, perhaps your light has not yet grown bright enough to cast a shadow. If no one betrays you, perhaps you have not yet approached the threshold of transformation. Hostility is the herald of authentic success. It is the sign that you are drawing near to the archetypal fire. It is important to see that the turning of others against you is not always an act of malice. More often it is unconscious, arising from forces far older than personal intention. The psyche carries within it primitive instincts, remnants of archaic tribal life. In the ancient village, the one who stood apart, who rose too high or shone too brightly, was a danger to the group, to the collective psyche. Difference equaled risk. The tall stalk must be cut down so that the field remains even. This instinct still moves within us. When you grow beyond the expectations of your circle, they do not consciously decide to oppose you. It is rather that an archetypal reflex stirs in them, and they act it out. Their suspicion, their resentment, their withdrawal. All are movements of the ancient psyche attempting to protect its sameness. But you are not here to remain in sameness. You are here to become whole. And individuation demands differentiation. It requires that you separate from the mass, even at the cost of their approval. This is the path of every hero in myth. Departure, initiation, return. But do not think that return means acceptance. Often the hero returns transformed, bearing a gift, but the tribe rejects the gift. They cannot recognize what they did not seek. This is why prophets are mocked, why visionaries are ridiculed, why pioneers are often exiled. The gift of transformation is too strange for those who cling to what was. And so, as you succeed, you will find yourself alienated, not because your gift is worthless, but because it does not fit the old container of their consciousness. Let us reflect on the psychology of envy more deeply. Envy is not merely jealousy of what another possesses. It is resentment at the revelation of one's own unlived life. When others see you approach success, they are not simply angry at your achievement. They are pained by the mirror of their own failure to pursue their destiny. Their shadow awakens, and it whispers that you must be pulled down, for your ascent threatens to expose their avoidance. In this sense, they do not hate you as you truly are. They hate the reminder of themselves that you carry. You become the screen onto which they project their unlived potential. and the projection burns them. This is why hostility often comes disguised as mockery, why the crowd laughs at the visionary. It is easier to laugh than to admit envy. It is easier to mock than to face the shadow. In dreams, envy often takes the form of poison. The dreamer may be offered food or drink that is tainted, or may feel himself surrounded by poisonous snakes. The poison is the psychic toxin of envy. It contaminates the bond between souls. What was once friendship becomes suspicious. What was once admiration becomes toxic. And yet, as with all dream symbols, poison can also be medicine if integrated consciously. The poison of envy, when recognized, forces the individual to develop resilience, to grow a stronger sense of self, not dependent on outer approval. The venom that was meant to kill becomes, in alchemical terms, the prima materia, the raw substance from which gold is forged. Understand this. The hostility you face is not without purpose. It is the hammer that forges you. If all were smooth, you would grow complacent. If all applauded, you would become inflated, swollen with false self-importance. But when others resist, when they betray, when they mock, you are driven inward. You are forced to find a center that cannot be shaken by outer opinion. And that center is the self. Thus, paradoxically, those who turn against you serve your deepest growth without intending to. They initiate you into authenticity. Yet this does not lessen the suffering. To walk the path of success is to walk a lonely road. The higher you climb, the thinner the air, and the fewer companions will join you. Many will fall away, not because you have wronged them, but because they cannot bear the altitude of your vision. They require the density of the valley, the comfort of familiar air. When they turn against you, it is often a way of justifying their inability to follow. They must tell themselves, you are arrogant, corrupt, unworthy. Otherwise, they would have to face their own refusal to ascend. Remember this. When you feel their eyes cold upon you, they are not describing you, they are defending themselves. They create an image of you as villain, so that they may remain the hero of their own still story. But their story remains stagnant. While yours continues to unfold, the unconscious often dramatizes this in mythic images. Consider the dream of a man who finds himself in a city, celebrated for his achievements, only to be chased by a mob through narrow alleys. He flees, confused, wondering why admiration has turned to pursuit. This is the archetypal moment when success transforms into threat. The mob is not merely others, it is the collective unconscious that resents the individual who has stepped too far out of line. The dream teaches him that he must not rely on the crowd, that his path is solitary, that applause and pursuit are but two sides of the same coin. And yet, within this hostility lies an invitation to love without needing to be loved, to give without needing recognition, to stand firm in solitude without bitterness. This is the alchemy of success. If you can endure hostility without hatred, betrayal without cynicism, envy without despair, then you have transformed not only yourself, but also the poison of the collective psyche. You become not merely successful in the outer sense, but a carrier of light In the inner, you embody what the mystics have called the wounded healer, one who suffers the wounds of other shadows but transmutes them into wisdom and strength. It is also necessary to address the shadow danger of success itself, for just as others may turn against you, so too may you turn against yourself if you identify too closely with the image of success. Inflation is the great peril. To rise is to risk believing that you are godlike, that you stand above the collective in essence, not merely in function. When this happens, the psyche punishes with downfall. We see it in myth. Icarus flies too close to the sun, intoxicated by his ascent, and falls into the sea. Success can intoxicate, and in intoxication lies destruction. Thus, the hostility of others, painful though it is, serves as a counterweight. It humbles you, reminding you that you are human, that you too cast a shadow. The envy and betrayal of others are not only obstacles but safeguards, preventing you from soaring into inflation. In this way, even their opposition protects you. And here we touch a deeper paradox. Those who turn against you, though they appear as enemies, may in truth be guardians. They force you to examine your motives, to purify your intentions, to remain anchored in the self. Without them, you might drift into delusion. Their opposition sharpens your discernment. Their betrayal teaches you detachment. Their envy inoculates you against vanity. Thus, what you experience as rejection may secretly be initiation. The unconscious arranges these encounters so that your ascent may be real, not false, grounded, not inflated. When you see this, bitterness softens. You begin to understand that those who oppose you are, in a strange way, collaborators in your destiny. They play the role your psyche requires. This does not mean you must remain among them, or that you must allow their poison to wound you endlessly. Often, individuation demands that you separate, that you withdraw into solitude, that you release those who cannot walk with you. But it does mean that you need not carry hatred. You can let them go without rancor, recognizing that their role in your life has been fulfilled. They have given you the gift of resistance, and through that gift you have grown. Do not be surprised. Then, when success feels like crucifixion, it is so because success is transformation, and transformation always involves sacrifice. You may lose friends, family, familiar comfort. You may be misunderstood, envied, betrayed. But if you endure, you gain something greater. Yourself, you gain a self not dependent on approval, not destroyed by rejection. You gain a wholeness that no crowd can give or take away. And this is the true reward of success. Not wealth, not fame, not applause, but union with your own destiny, fidelity to your own soul. The closer you approach this union, the more sharply you will feel the resistance of others. And so when they turn against you, remember, it is the sign that you are near the threshold. The hostility of others is the shadow's announcement that the self is near. Do not retreat. Pass through the hostility as through the fire of initiation, and on the other side you will find not the applause of the world, but the silence of the soul, the stillness of the self, and the unshakable knowledge that you have become what you were meant to be. You may have noticed that as you rise, the loneliness grows more profound. This loneliness is not a punishment, but a rite of passage. The psyche cannot carry you into wholeness while you are still entangled in the web of approval. Approval is the mask of the collective, and the self calls you to remove all masks. It summons you to walk into the desert of your own soul, where no applause can follow, where no critic can define you, where you are stripped of both flattery and ridicule alike. This is why so many who succeed outwardly but do not endure inwardly collapse under the weight of isolation. They mistook applause for strength. They mistook recognition for individuation. When applause falls silent and recognition fades, they find themselves hollow, and the collapse is swift. To endure the desert, you must drink from a deeper well. That well is within, in the waters of the unconscious, where archetypes rise like fountains. There you discover the real source of your vitality, a source no betrayal can exhaust. I tell you now, the unconscious does not care for your outer success. It cares for your wholeness, and wholeness requires sacrifice. Sometimes it demands the sacrifice of friends who cannot walk with you. Sometimes it demands the sacrifice of illusions you clung to, illusions of being liked, of being understood, of being carried by the collective. All these must fall away so that the soul may stand alone in its truth. When people turn against you, it is the self tearing away what is no longer needed. The betrayal you experience outside is often the outward enactment of an inner necessity. The necessity to sever ties with false supports, to relinquish dependence on outer validation, to claim the authority of your own being. But I must also caution you, to interpret every opposition as proof of your greatness is a dangerous delusion. Sometimes people turn against you not because you are fulfilling destiny, but because you have fallen into arrogance, inflation, or unconscious cruelty. The psyche is subtle, and the shadow waits for any opportunity to masquerade as the self. You must therefore be vigilant, discerning at every moment whether the hostility you encounter is the resistance of the collective against individuation or the correction of reality against your own inflation. This is why humility is essential. Without humility, you cannot distinguish between destiny and delusion. Humility keeps you grounded, reminding you that the self is larger than you, that your success is not your possession but your participation in a greater unfolding. There is a story from a patient's dream that illuminates this. He dreamt of climbing a high tower, proud of his ascent, only to find at the top a mirror. In the mirror, he saw not a hero, but a grotesque figure, swollen and monstrous. The dream revealed to him that his striving had become inflation, that his so-called success was deforming him. He resisted the dream, called it foolish. But the unconscious does not lie within months. His outer life collapsed, and only then did he understand. The hostility he met from others had been a warning, a mirror of his own distortion. If he had listened, he might have transformed without such pain. Thus you must listen carefully, not only to the applause or to the hostility, but to your own depths. Ask yourself, is this hostility the shadow resisting my light, or is it the mirror reflecting my distortion? Only the inner work of self-confrontation can tell. Without it, you risk misinterpreting every opposition as martyrdom and falling into the tragic archetype of the false prophet who mistakes his own inflation for divine mission. True individuation does not glorify the ego. It strips it bare. It does not inflate. It humbles, and in that humility lies the power to endure hostility without hatred and betrayal, without collapse. Do not imagine, then, that success is triumph. Success is initiation. It is a death of the old self, a confrontation with shadow, a stripping away of illusions. The hostility of others is one of its stages, as necessary as night is today. Only the one who passes through this night with eyes open, without bitterness, without inflation, emerges into true wholeness. This is why the ancient mysteries always involved trials, persecutions, humiliations. They dramatized what the psyche enacts in life. If you succeed without trial, it is not real success, but a fragile imitation. If you rise without resistance, you have not risen at all. You have merely floated in the currents of the collective. But if you rise through resistance, through betrayal, through envy, and remain whole, then you have touched the self. I say to you now, when they turn against you, bow inwardly, for the archetype is unfolding. You are entering the sacred chamber where individuation is forged. Do not curse the betrayers. See them as masks of the shadow. Do not cling to the applauders. See them as masks of the persona. Go beyond those masks to the face of the self. There, you will find a strength that cannot be shaken by praise or blame. There, you will find a center that is neither inflated by success nor destroyed by failure. There, you will discover that the true measure of success is not what you achieve, but who you become in the process. Remember, too, that the world always lags behind the individual. The prophet, the visionary, the pioneer, they walk ahead, and the crowd follows only after years, decades, sometimes centuries. Do not expect immediate recognition. Often your success will be mocked in your lifetime and honored only after your death. This, too, is part of the archetype. The unconscious does not measure time as the ego does. It asks only whether you have lived true to your destiny. Recognition may or may not come. What matters is that you answer the call. And if people turn against you, it is often the clearest sign that you are walking a path not yet visible to them. Endure, and in time, the path may open for others as well. But even if it never does, your task is not diminished. The self does not ask for applause. It asks for fidelity. It asks that you remain faithful to the inner call, even when all outer voices turn hostile. And this faithfulness is the seed of transformation, not only for yourself, but for the collective. For though they may resist you now, though they may betray and envy, some part of your transformation will work upon them unconsciously. You plant the seed in the soil of the collective, and though they may spit upon it, one day it will grow. This is the mystery. The one who is rejected today becomes the source of life tomorrow. The crucified becomes the resurrected. The betrayed becomes the healer. The mocked becomes the teacher. Such is the way of the archetype, eternal and unbroken. So do not despair when they turn against you. See it for what it is, the threshold of transformation, Walk it with humility, with vigilance, with courage. Confront your own shadow, even as you face theirs. Let their hostility strip you of dependence, their envy free you from illusions, their betrayal drive you inward to the self, and when you emerge, you will no longer be the same. You will not be dependent on their love, nor destroyed by their hate. You will be whole, and wholeness is the one success. No envy, no betrayal, no hostility can ever take from you. And so I leave you with this: success is not the applause of others,